Have you ever opened up your laptop, placed your hands on the keyboard, looked at the blank page in front of you, and felt absolutely nothing come? No words, no clear thought, no sentence waiting, and no creative spark or flow. Just that awful white space staring back at you. And then almost instantly, the stories begin. But not the stories that go on the page, but rather the stories in your mind. The maybe I'm not meant to write, maybe I have nothing to say, maybe this book idea sounded great in my head, but it falls apart the moment I try to write it. Maybe you say, I'm just kidding myself. Maybe real writers can sit down and write, and the fact that I'm frozen means something's wrong with me. My friend, if that's happened to you, I want you to take a breath right now. Because the blank page is rarely the real problem. The blank page is usually the place where everything underneath the writing suddenly gets very loud. The pressure, the expectation, the fear of getting it wrong or wasting time, and that fear that perhaps the words in your head won't look good on the page. So today in this Mindset Monday episode, we're going to talk about what to do when you stare at that blank page and nothing comes. And I'm going to give you a simple way back in. And it's not by forcing yourself to write beautifully, and it's not by demanding a perfect opening sentence. It's by helping your mind and body feel safe enough to begin. Because sometimes the way back into the book is much smaller, softer, and more practical than you think. So stay with me. If you feel called to write a book, but writer's block, procrastination, and self-doubt keep pulling you from the page, you're not alone, and you're not meant to stay stuck. Hi, I'm Maddison, author and life coach, and I've created this podcast as a creative space grounded in faith and mindset transformations to help you break through your blocks, gain creative clarity, and finally finish the book you're meant to write. So grab your cup of liquid gold and let's write the darn book together. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Write the Darn Book. I'm your host, Maddison, and today's Mindset Monday episode is all about what to do when you stare at that blank page and nothing comes. And I know this one's going to land for so many of you because blank page freeze is one of those experiences that can feel so personal when it happens to you. You can have the idea, you can know what you want to write, you can have the notebook, the outline, your cup of liquid gold ready to go. Perhaps the house is even quiet and you've carved out the time and the good intentions. But then when you open the document, you suddenly feel that your mind goes completely blank. So today we're going to gently unpack what's actually happening in that moment, why it feels so confronting, and what you can do to move from that frozen place to writing one small, honest sentence. Because that is where we begin, with one sentence. Let's start with the truth that I really want you to hear. A blank mind at the page doesn't mean you have no story. And it doesn't mean that there's no message that you need to tell. It also doesn't mean that you're out of ideas or you've lost your writing ability. Very often, when you sit down to write and nothing comes, what you're experiencing isn't emptiness, it's overload. Your mind is trying to do way too much all at once. It's trying to find the perfect first sentence. Perhaps it's trying to remember the whole chapter. It's trying to make sure that the scene works and that it pleases your future readers. It's also trying to avoid criticism and trying to sound like the version of you who's already confident, polished, published, admired, and completely certain. And that is a lot to ask of a nervous system before you've even written one word. So of course, you freeze. Now imagine waking up to a microphone in front of a huge room of people and being told, say something brilliant right now on the spot. Make sure it's original, make sure it matters, make sure everyone likes it, and make sure it proves that you deserve to be here. Now most people would quite genuinely and very reasonably freeze. And yet that's often what we do unconsciously to ourselves when we sit down and stare at a blank page. We try to turn a private writing moment into a performance. We try to make it perfect. And then when you open the document, instead of asking, what's the next small thing I can write, you instead ask yourself, can I prove in this very first sentence that I'm a real writer? No wonder the words vanish. So today, I want to shift that meaning of the blank page for you. The blank page isn't a test, and it's not a verdict or a measure of your talent. It's simply the starting line. And when the starting line feels too loaded, we need to lower the pressure, speak to the part of us that feels unsafe, and you need to give your mind a much smaller doorway back into the words and the work. That's what we're going to do today. Now, I know this feeling so well. I've had seasons where I've sat down with my manuscript that I genuinely wanted to write, and the moment that I opened the document, my whole system seemed to lock up. And the frustrating part was I cared so deeply about my story. It wasn't that I was lazy or had no imagination or had suddenly forgotten how to write, but the page felt so loaded. It felt like whatever I wrote next had to carry too much weight. I had to prove I could still do it. And I had to prove that the book was working, that my contract, the deadline, the publishing expectations, even my own identity of being an author, that I had all of it. And I had to prove I was still the person I thought I was too. And once writing carries that much meaning, your brain can start treating the blank page like a threat. You might be sitting safely at your desk with your coffee beside you and your manuscript open, but inside your body, it can feel literally like you're standing on the edge of something risky. Because the moment you write, the imagined becomes real. And once it's real, it can be judged. Once it's real, it can also fall short of what you pictured it would be. And once it's real, you have to keep going. That's the part we often miss. Sometimes the blank page feels hard because starting means committing. And committing to the book can stir up all the tender places inside you. You start thinking things about, what if I can't finish? What if the idea is too big for me? What if the words feel clumsy and I can't write them properly? Or what if I waste months on this and it goes nowhere? What if people read it and they see me, they see who I am on the inside? What if I find out I'm not as good as I hoped? These are the questions that can sit beneath a blank page. And when those questions are running quietly in the background, your mind may protect you in the only way it knows how. It gives you nothing, and nothing feels safer than something. A blank page can feel safer than a messy paragraph. A closed laptop can feel safer than a chapter that needs lots of work. Scrolling your phone can feel safer than meeting the truth of where the manuscript is right now. But my friends, safer is not the same as satisfying. And deep down, you know that because part of you knows that you were here to write that book. And a part of you is still carrying that story and message, and it just will not go away because the inner you knows that it is destined to come out onto the page. So that part of you will keep coming back to this idea, even days or weeks or months of avoiding writing it. That part of you is still there. So our work isn't to shame the frozen part of you. Our work is to help the frozen part of you feel safe enough to let the writing begin again. And I want to say that clearly because it's so important. You don't need to bully yourself past the blank page. You need to build a bridge across it. And that's what we're going to do today. So let's talk about what to actually do when you sit down and stare at a blank page and no words come. I'm going to walk you through a simple 5-part process. And I want you to think of this as a writing rescue process, something you can come back to in the moment, not as a huge ritual and not as another complicated system to perfect, just as a practical pathway to get you from frozen to moving. The 5 steps are, firstly, name what's happening. Second is lower the pressure. Third is ask the page a smaller question. The 4th step is to write the first honest sentence. And the 5th step is to build momentum for 5 minutes. So let's go through each one individually. So the first step is to name what's happening. And I want you to do this whenever you freeze at the blank page. Sit down, look at it, and name the experience accurately. What's going on within you? Now, in this process, most writers go straight into judgment. I'm blocked, I can't write, I have nothing, this is hopeless. But those statements aren't neutral. They create a state in your nervous system. They send your nervous system literally the message that something's gone wrong, and it shuts down to protect you. What I want you to do, instead of labeling yourself, is to name the pattern that you're experiencing. So try this. My system is feeling pressure at the starting point, or my mind is trying to protect me from getting this wrong, or it could be, this is a freeze response and I can work with it and through it. Can you see and feel how different those responses are compared to the first responses where you're judging yourself? Instead of I can't write, the truth becomes something in me feels unsafe to begin. And that shift matters a lot because I can't write sounds like an identity, whereas something in me feels unsafe beginning sounds like a pattern. And patterns can be worked with and shifted. This is one of the biggest mindset shifts I want you to take from today. When the blank page freezes you, the problem is often the pressure around the writing, not the writing itself. So before you try to write, pause and name what's actually happening. You might even place a hand on your chest, take a slow breath in, and say, this is pressure. This is protection, and I can begin gently. That brings your nervous system back into the present moment because you aren't in danger. You're at your desk, you're opening a document, you're writing a book 1 sentence at a time. Once you've named what's happening, the next step is to lower the pressure. And I mean dramatically here, because most writers sit down to write with a hidden expectation that the first sentence of the session needs to be really good. It needs to be usable. It needs to capture attention. It needs to sound like a finished book. But the first sentence of a writing session is often just the door opening into it. It's not the final wallpaper. It's not the polished furniture. It is literally just the doorway. And sometimes the door creaks. That's fine. I want you to give yourself a new rule here. The first words of the session are allowed to be ordinary, not beautiful, not clever, certainly not final, but ordinary. Your job is to get the door open. This is where I love using what I call a pressure release sentence. Before you begin the actual scene or chapter, type something like, I'm easing into this scene now, or I know this part feels unclear and I'm going to find my way 1 sentence at a time. Or you could even use, my only job right now is to begin. Literally write that into your manuscript because that counts. It truly does. It can be enough in that moment of your fingers moving over the keyboard that your nervous system starts to feel safe And the blank page is no longer a blank page because there are words on there. And that matters. You've shifted from starting to engaging, and you've given your brain a signal that writing's begun. From there, the next sentence becomes easier than the first one because you're no longer trying to leap from nothing into brilliance. You're moving from the ordinary sentence into the next. And this is how writing actually happens. Not in a grand, dramatic burst all the time, but often in small possible beginnings that then move the words through you. Now, step 3 is about asking the page a smaller question. When writers freeze, they're often asking a question that's far too big. It could be, what should I write? That sounds simple, right? But it's actually enormous. Your brain hears that and starts searching the entire book, the whole story, the whole message, every possible scene, every possible opening, every reader expectation, every fear. So we need to approach it with a smaller question. Instead of asking, what should I write? Ask one of these. What's the next thing the reader needs to know? Or what is my character doing right now? What can my character see, hear, or feel in this exact moment? What's the next honest thought in this chapter? What's the simplest version of this sentence? Can you feel how much easier those are? A smaller question gives your mind a smaller target. And this is especially useful depending on how you naturally process information. If you're a visual writer, ask, what do I see in this moment? If you're an auditory writer, ask, what do I hear? Or what would someone say first? If you're kinesthetic, ask, what does the character feel in their body right now? And if you're auditory digital, ask, what's the next logical point or next beat? You're not forcing your mind to work against itself. You're giving it an entry point that matches how it already processes the world. And for your bird personalities, the same thing applies. A dove might need to ask, what's the emotional truth here? An owl might ask, what's the next clear piece of information I need to convey? A peacock might need to ask, what feels most alive in this scene that I want to write? An eagle might ask, what moves this scene forward? Those are tendencies, of course, not boxes, but they can be really helpful doorways. Because very often, the reason a writer freezes at the blank page is that they're trying to enter the writing through someone else's door. So ask the page a question that your creative mind can actually answer. Now we come to the next most important part, step 4, which is writing the first honest sentence. Now, remember I've said the first honest sentence, not the best sentence, not the prettiest sentence, the first honest sentence. And by honest, I mean a sentence that tells the truth of where you are in the scene, the chapter, or the idea. For fiction, that might be, she stood at the window and tried to understand what had just happened. Not particularly spectacular, right? And it probably definitely won't stay in your final draft, but it gives you something to work with. Someone's standing somewhere, something has happened, emotion is present. Now you can move. For non-fiction writers, the first honest sentence might be, the reason this matters is because so many people misunderstand what change actually requires. Again, that's pretty rough and you probably won't use that in your final draft, but it gets you into the book and it starts you writing. So that blank page is no longer just a blank page. One honest sentence. That's all we're looking for. And here's a little trick that can help you too. Start with what you know. You might not know how to write the perfect opening, but you probably know something, right? You know where the character is or perhaps what emotion is present. You know what question the reader needs answered, and you know what problem the chapter's addressing. So begin there. Write, what I know is ... then complete the sentence. Perhaps it might be, what I know is she's angry, but she's pretending she's fine. What I know is this chapter is about why people keep abandoning their goals. What I know is this scene needs to move them from trust into suspicion. What I know is the reader needs to feel less alone here. That phrase, what I know is a powerful one because it moves you out of the huge unknown and back into the known. And writing grows from the known into the unknown. You begin with the thread that you can see and you follow it. Once you've written that first honest sentence, the next step is not to write for 2 hours. It's not to finish the chapter, and it's not to make up for all of the writing you've avoided last week. And I know some of you will try and cram it all in. I tend to do that too. That is my ego tendency coming out. But that's not the goal, okay? The next step is 5 minutes only. And this is where the 5-minute momentum method comes in. You set a timer for 5 minutes and write anything connected to the scene, the chapter, or your idea. Messy is absolutely fine. Fragments are fine. Notes are fine. Dialogue without tags is fine. A rough paragraph is fine. The aim is movement. 5 minutes is small enough that your inner critic has very little to argue with. I mean, really, can you argue with, I'm going to set a timer for 5 minutes and I'm going to write about something or anything that's connected to my scene or chapter or idea? And once that timer goes off, you might keep going. And that's great. Let that happen if you feel naturally inclined to do it. But the agreement stays small, 5 minutes. And if that's it, after the timer goes off, if you don't feel like doing more, then honor that 5 minutes that you set yourself. Because the goal is to teach your nervous system that beginning is safe. Every time you sit down, lower the pressure, ask a small question, write one honest sentence, and stay with it for 5 minutes. Every time you do that, you're building trust with yourself. You're teaching your mind, I can begin. I can write something rough and survive. I can actually touch the manuscript without being swallowed whole by it. I can come back from this. And that trust is the real work. Because writer's block often grows when the page becomes a place of pressure, judgment, and proof. Writing flow returns when the page becomes a place of permission, presence, and practice. So let me bring the full process together for you. The next time you stare at a blank page and nothing comes, try this. First, name what's happening. My system is feeling pressure at the starting point. Second, lower the pressure. The first words are allowed to be ordinary. Third, ask a small question. What's the next thing I know? Fourth, write the first honest sentence. And fifth, stay with it for 5 minutes. That's it. That is your way back in. And notice what we're doing here. We're not making the blank page mean you've failed, and we're not waiting until confidence magically reappears. We're also not demanding a perfect state before we write. We're creating the conditions for one small act of writing, and one small act matters, because the writer who finishes isn't always the writer who feels inspired before every session. In fact, it's usually the opposite. The writer who finishes is the writer who learns to return to the page again and again. And the way you learn to return to the page again and again is return after the freeze. Return to the page after the messy session, after the awkward paragraph, after the week that got away. Return after the fear got loud. You return after the blank page stared back and the words felt far away. That is what we're building. The ability to come back to the page with more steadiness, more compassion, and more practical tools. And if you've been listening and nodding along thinking, Yes, this is exactly what happens when I sit down to write. Then I want you to know that this is a pattern and it is something we can work with. Because when you understand how your mind responds to pressure, how your personality shapes your writing process, and what kind of support your nervous system needs at the page, everything begins to feel clear. That is a huge part of what I do inside my writing personality blueprint sessions. We look at how you are uniquely wired to write, how resistance tends to show up for you specifically, and what kind of writing rhythm suits how you are wired, and what practical tools as well are going to help you come back to the page with more ease and self-trust. So if you'd love personalized support with your writing patterns, head to madisonmichaels.com/blueprint and book in your one-off, one-on-one writing personality blueprint session. And I know there's a lot of you out there who might be thinking, yes, I want to do that, but I'm too scared to. I want you to think, what is your future self going to thank you for doing? Are they going to thank you for being too scared to take a leap, or are they going to thank you for doing that? I think you know the answer. So look, if you feel called to find that extra support, I promise you it's going to really help you understand how you are wired to write. And I'd truly love to support you in that journey. All right, my friends, please remember, if you are staring at the page and wondering what's wrong with you, there is nothing wrong with you. This is a pattern that is asking to be understood. And once you understand your patterns, then you can build a pathway through them. So as you move into your next writing session, I want you to take this with you. The blank page isn't your enemy, even though it really can feel like it, okay? It is not a verdict on your talent, and it is not proof that your story's left you. It's a starting place. And if that starting place feels loaded, then meet it gently. Take a breath. Name what's happening. Lower the pressure. Ask the page a smaller question. Write the first honest sentence, and then give yourself 5 minutes. That's how you begin. Not with force, not with shame, not with huge dramatic demand that today has to be the day that you write the perfect chapter. You begin with one small sentence that opens the doorway. And from there, the next sentence can come. And the one after that. And then the one after that. Remember, my friends, you are the vessel for your story. So let the words flow through you and onto the page. Until next time, take care and let's write the darn book together. My friend, I hope today's episode gave you exactly what you needed for your writing journey. And if it did, would you take 30 seconds to share it with another writer who's struggling to start or finish their book? And if you're loving the show, I'd be so grateful if you left a quick review. It means the world to me and truly makes my day to know that this podcast is helping you. And as you head back into your week, I hope you feel more supported and connected to your creativity. And remember, you're a vessel for the story. So let the words flow through you and onto the page. All right, I'm off to refill my cup of liquid gold and go and do a little writing of my own. Take care, and I'll meet you back here in the next episode of Write the Darn Book.